So, sitting with me today is someone who is embracing all that the loss adjusting world has to offer, from both an academic, a hands-on, and network. She has achieved considerable exam success whilst dealing with an increased caseload. So, how has she done it? And what can others learn from her success? Hello, everyone. I am Sue Taylor, and you are listening to a Sitting with Sue podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have sitting with me Ellie Smith, who is a loss adjuster at Channel Islands Adjusters Limited. She has just passed her CILA certificate exams with the help of her mentor, Josh. Ellie actually volunteered to come on this podcast because she wanted to explain to everyone about how mentoring and general support has made all the difference to her. Firstly, Ellie, can you give us a little bit of background information about your career and your current role? And then we'll go straight into our first question.
Perfect. Hi, Sue. Thank you. So I have been a loss adjuster for 2.5 years, just feels like a lifetime. So I sort of fell into the insurance industry and never thought desk work was for me. And then I sort of heard about the role and I thought that sounds a bit like me because I don't like sitting still and I like being out and about. And it just seemed like the perfect mix in between where you had a desk-based role and also you could go out and meet people and learn sort of something new every single day. So yeah, I've been with the company for 2.5 years. Previously, I didn't have any insurance experience, and I was actually cabin crew for our local airline, and then COVID sort of turned my world upside down. So found myself here and not looking back.
So I suppose actually it didn't just turn your world upside down, it brought it to a grinding halt. So
Yeah.
you thought, well, if you couldn't fly high in the skies, you'd go for a high flying insurance career.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
in that case, can you describe Josh to me before we go on to the next bit?
Wow, I need a whole episode in it. Josh is a very unique character because he's just become a fellow. So we celebrated that last week. So he's just celebrated 10 years with the company. So Josh is always looking at the next claim. And I think that's something I've massively taken away from him is keep moving, and he's Mr. Efficiency. So he has worked out how to do everything in the least time possible, but still, achieving everything. So yeah, he's a character. He keeps us entertained. It's big personality in the office, but he's the kind of person who can deliver bad news, but also, keep a level head and is very in control of every situation.
Well, Josh, I do hope you're going to be listening to this. So, what was the single most important thing that Josh did to help you? And making the coffee does not actually count for this.
Well, I think he's made me possibly one coffee in the 2.5 years, but I don't reciprocate. So I think the most important thing, and also we've just taken on someone else, we've just taken on another trainee adjuster, so I can sort of reflect and see myself in him, is that the most important thing with the role, I think, is learning by example. So continually reflecting everything back to the material that you're taking in, because there are two distinct sides to the job, the studying and the site visits and the caseload. And the main thing that Josh did is we just kept repeating the same processes over and over again, as with the nature of claims handling. And he would always say, oh, remember that bit that we did yesterday in studying? That's what we're using today. That's the knowledge we're using today. This is where this part of the book comes into it. And what's the next step? So he'd say to me all the time, take a pause. What would you do next? And that's what we just did all the time. We did it repetitively. So that really helped.
So, he was helping you turn theory into practice as
Yes.
well. So, you'd get somewhere that you'd started to embed the theory, and then he was making you think about the practice. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. So we would do one structured study session a week that we couldn't use any excuses to get out of. And we would sort of take it all in and he'd go, remember that claim. Yeah, that's where that knowledge applies. And then the next claim, next liability claim that comes in, we'll review that and we'll say, right, okay, that applies to that part of the book. And we just, kept reflecting it back to the knowledge. And also, as we do every day, looking back at policy wordings, because we work across a huge number of policy wordings, and every single time, although you assume you knew the policy wording, looking at it, getting it up, finding the part in the policy that that it related to. So yeah, that was key for me.
And to me, it's a key point as well. You always have to read the actual policy wording. You
Yeah,
can't just automatically assume that because you read that wording 3 times before, that
yeah,
particular wording is going to say the same thing.
yes, yeah.
So you had a formal once weekly mentoring session, and then it was a constant process.
Yeah, I'd say it's about an hour and a half every week where we would sit down and say, right, okay, what's the next section? So all the books in like a logical way. And then I also did additional things. So I wrote all my own notes, obviously, because I'm a very visual learner and I have to do things repetitively in order for them to sink in. And I couldn't just read from the book and take it all in. So we would do a structured section where we'd say, right, what's the next chapter? And read it and then apply it and then do questions on it. I would then go away and do all my notes, and then I eventually whittled the notes down to being like really brief bullet points or catchphrases, and then doing things like a couple of games, case law snap. So I did like what the case law was, and then so I would pair them together. So I'd do like a really quick pairing game and just silly little things as you would when you were like a child. And I would do that on my own, but then we would sort of reflect back to more structured learning.
Right. So when you weren't playing card games, in order to prepare for your exams. So you had a plan that you were going to use certain tools to help you learn, but did you sort of have like a formal timetable, or did you make it up as you went along?
We sort of made it up. I think that's because obviously, well, everyone in the office is obviously taking the exams as well. So they all just sort of reflected back on their experience and said, do this bit first, do this bit. But we just sort of worked through the more boring side of literally reading the text. And then we didn't necessarily have a plan. I made my own plans when I knew my exams were booked. So I've got a thing where I can't tell anyone I'm taking an exam. I have to do it in secret. So I then made a timetable for myself as to what I needed to narrow down. So I would obviously do the things that I knew the most, give the least attention to, and then sort of whittle that down in the few days leading up to my exam. But we didn't really have a formal plan, as with the nature of the job. You can plan with the best intention and everything goes out the window. So that's how we did it.
So the certificate is under your belt,
Yeah,
and now you're going to move on to the diploma.
yeah.
You take everything that you've learned in the certificate, and then you have to widen that experience and follow the syllabus. So do you regard mentoring as essential for the diploma exam as well, or is it just icing on the cake? What's your plan for the diploma?
Oh, I have to be honest, I don't really have a formal plan yet because I'm on a little bit of a studying break. I clear that tab in my mind for a couple of months. It's been pretty, but I don't have a formal plan yet, but I think we will sit down and go, right, okay, this is going to be the sections. Essentially, Josh says to me, these are the sections I think you can do on your own. I don't think you need me to cloud your input. Use your gut. This is what you do every day, and this will be, what I think you can succeed in on your own. But I definitely think mentoring is essential. And I think, but especially for us as we're a little guy in the industry, there's only 6 of us, we don't have a mentor scheme internally, like a formal mentor scheme like other large trusts do. So mentorship is absolutely essential, I think, to success. And we can all share our experience. We're lucky because we're in a very small office. We can just literally stand up and shout. But yeah, I think when you're a smaller team and a smaller independent company, it's absolutely essential to have a mentor.
But is it also to a certain extent easier because of the size and the fact that it can therefore be very, very hands-on?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I said, I'm a very visual learner. I do struggle to motivate myself to just sit and read paragraphs and paragraphs of things that I'm not necessarily ever going to use again. So having that sort of team discussion or saying, playing devil's advocate, we do that all the time with claims, and we'll stand up and go, I've got this claim, this is how I'm going to deal with it. Do you all agree? Essentially. And someone might say, well, I would do that. Have you read that and applied that? And you go, oh, okay, yeah. So I think it does help because you have more of like a family around you, a team to sort of build you up. You're not on your own, which is, yeah, absolutely essential, I think.
And as you go through from the certificate to the diploma, then it's really asking you to think more about some of your own experiences and applying it. It's far more about the application
Yeah.
because there's far less formal books than that for you to work your way through. So
Mhm.
that there are some publications, it's far more actually pulling into the whole process what you have learnt and what your experiences are.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to that aspect of it because, like I said, I do have the kind of brain that if it's not relevant, if I'm not going to touch on it again, then I find it more difficult to apply it to everyday life. So I'm looking forward to actually being able to, get into it. This is what I do. This is what I do every single day, and actually be able to apply it and talk about it. So I think that's going to be not easier because obviously it's the next level, but a lot better for me personally to really get stuck into that than learning all these case laws that I'm not necessarily going to ever reflect on again.
So what could CILA or anybody else or any other organisations or people do to support your exam journey apart from Josh and the rest of the office?
We all we all agree actually, we've all discussed it as an office. The major gap with CILA is past exam papers or test questions because nothing can prepare you for the actual scenario like doing it, right? And although it's some people would consider it as almost cheating because you're tailoring your study to what you're being asked. I just think it's such a good way of reflecting on your knowledge, right? Where are the gaps in my knowledge? Or if you think you've got a section down and you think, okay, I've got good knowledge on that. And then you take a paper and you haven't learned what they're going to ask you, if you know what I mean. You haven't learned it in a way that they're going to test you on. That's where you can fall down. And I don't necessarily think that's fair because you have the knowledge. It's just the specific way the question is written that lets you down. So I think there's a massive calling for having practice papers or past papers to access. So Josh made them for me. So now we have like a little catalogue of past papers. But obviously that, again, we're mentoring, that involves someone else giving up their time to help you. So I think that's really important to have practice questions and to be able to put things into real life scenarios.
So, is there a question you wish I had asked you and I haven't?
Um, Slightly controversial, I'm just going to say it, is the difference between the CII and CILA with studying is quite vast. And I think that is purely down to resource. And I think that although the CII don't hold your hand, like I said, the back catalogue of information is just is invaluable. And just being able to access that made all the difference to my studying. I did a fast track course for my CII and did it in 5 months. And my CILA, I was just that little bit more unsure. Yes, I was less experienced, but just having that catalogue of information to reflect on and resources just made all the difference. So I think there's a big difference there.
Very valid point.
Yeah.
So, from today, you'd love to have CILA examples for the exam papers. Mentoring has really, really helped you. That you need a plan of some sort. It doesn't have to be a rigid plan, but it's something that you can follow so that you get the requirement, if you like, to put your head down and actually get on with it.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is applying the practice to the theory.
Yeah, absolutely. Applying it is what we do every day, isn't it? So just reflecting all the time on what you've learned and how that applies to real world examples is my personal recipe for success.
Well, that recipe draws today's podcast to a close. And a huge thank you to you, Ellie, for joining me and being so interesting and inspiring for others. I think that really is a key point. So, to check out my other podcasts, please go to www.suetaylor.co.uk. Thank you, Ellie. Bye bye.